My S30's former roommate, M40's, just flipped out on me via text over a coffee mug. Yep, you read that right, a coffee mug. I never thought I'd find myself in a ridiculous situation over a coffee mug, but here we are. Let me take you back to a few months ago when my fiance's old friend, Doug, moved into our lives. Or rather, crashed at our place for way too long. Initially, it seemed harmless. Doug was a nice guy to grab lunch or a drink with. But as a roommate, well, let's just say he was a little oblivious to the concept of personal space and boundaries. He moved their stuff around without asking, broke a few things, and borrowed items with the promise of returning them, only to take the replacements when he finally moved out. After a lot of back and forth, we finally set a deadline for Doug to find a new place. Thankfully, a friend of mine needed a roommate, and Doug moved in with him, which was a relief for my fiancé and me. We were just happy to have our house back, even if we were still missing a few kitchen items. Fast forward to one evening when I went to visit Rob, Doug's new roommate, to pick up a bottle of bourbon he had bought for us. While chatting in the kitchen, I spotted a Starbucks You Are Here mug from my home state of Wisconsin sitting on the counter. Now I'm a collector of these mugs, and I hadn't seen mine in a while. I flipped the mug over, hoping to find my husband's initials on the bottom, as he often marks his cups to claim them. Sure enough, there it was, Sharpie indicating it was mine. Excited, I told Rob, "Tell Doug I'm reclaiming my mug. I've been missing this one." I took the mug with me, thinking nothing of it. The next morning, I received a text from Doug, demanding I return the mug to Rob for him. He claimed it was a gift he received from a friend in Wisconsin. I replied, pointing out the Sharpie, and suggesting that maybe we had mixed them up. What followed was a barrage of texts from Doug, who was clearly upset. He insisted that the mug had never left his possession since he got it back in Wisconsin. I tried to remain calm, explaining that I wasn't trying to create conflict. I just thought I had found my mug. But Doug wasn't having it. His messages became increasingly heated, filled with exclamations and accusations. I was taken aback by how intensely he reacted over a coffee mug. I mean, it's just a cup. I told him that if he truly believed it was his, I'd be willing to let it go. But instead of calming down, he kept sending more messages, getting more defensive and snarky. At this point, I decided to stop responding. It felt a bit creepy, and I didn't want to engage in a back and forth over something so trivial. Later, I talked to my fiancé, who was out of town at the time. Doug had been messaging him too, asking if he marked his coffee mugs. When my fiancé confirms that he did, Doug exploded on him as well. It was all so absurd. I genuinely believed the mug was mine, but if Doug had a similar one, I wouldn't mind letting him keep it. It was just a mix-up after all. Rob even mentioned that Doug was so upset that he left for work early just to avoid the situation. I couldn't help but feel a bit guilty, as I'm usually the peacemaker in these situations. But I also felt unfairly attacked over what seemed like an innocent mistake. I kept thinking that if Doug had just approached me calmly, we could have resolved this without all the drama. So here I am, left wondering if I should reach out again to smooth things over or just let it go. It's truly the silliest argument I've been involved in since middle school. A coffee mug shouldn't cause this much chaos, right? Let me take you back to a rather bizarre chapter in my life, one that all started with a coffee mug. You see, my former roommate Doug had recently moved out, and in the midst of packing up his things, he bundled up a coffee mug that I had thought was mine. Without a second thought, I grabbed it on my way out and took it home, thinking nothing of it. Well, that was a mistake. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of text messages from Doug, who was absolutely furious. He claimed that the mug was his and accused me of lying about it. I was completely shell-shocked. I mean, really? A coffee mug? It felt so silly to even be in this situation. I debated whether or not to respond to his angry texts, and if I did, how I should approach it. As I pondered my next move, I received some advice from a friend, who suggested that Doug's outburst was more about deflecting blame than anything else. Apparently, he was trying to distract me from other issues he had caused. I decided to take a step back and not engage further. After all, Doug had a history of being a bit of a bully, and I didn't want to play into his games. Interestingly enough, Doug's antics didn't stop there. He began sending my husband random messages saying things like, "I'm just gonna come get my trailer," after my husband refused to take his side in the mug debacle. This was actually a positive turn of events for us, because we had been trying to get Doug to move his trailer out of our yard for months. He had promised to pay us storage fees, but those were never forthcoming. My friend suggested I create a paper trail regarding the trailer situation. So, I started documenting everything via text. Doug had previously agreed to pick it up before we returned from our honeymoon, but that didn't happen. Now we were ready to take action. We needed to mow the lawn, and the trailer was in the way. I hoped Doug would finally handle it. As the days went by, I learned more about Doug's character through his interactions with my new roommate, Rob. Rob had recently moved in because his wife had relocated for work. We had warned him about Doug's quirks, and it seemed that Doug was living up to his reputation. He had let Rob's dog escape, sprayed pepper spray in the yard just to test it, and even told Rob he couldn't house sit for him while he was away for our wedding. Rob was not a fan, to say the least. Fast forward a week, and karma decided to intervene. Doug, in an attempt to make me look bad, started telling our mutual friends that I had stolen his coffee mug. Ironically, this backfired spectacularly. Instead of alienating me, it only served to confirm what everyone already knew about him. His behavior was becoming too much for Rob, who eventually sat Doug down and asked him to leave. Doug was given 30 days to vacate, but he announced he was moving back in with his parents anyway. Then came the day when I returned home to find Doug's SUV tearing out of our yard with his trailer in tow. While I was relieved to see the trailer finally gone, I was dismayed to find that Doug had ripped up our lawn in the process and left a mess behind. My husband and I exchanged glances, both agreeing that Doug's selfishness was evident. The very next day, Doug called my husband, claiming his SUV had broken down and he needed a ride home. My husband was busy getting our nephews ready for a day out and politely declined. Doug insisted that he was right on the way, but my husband knew that picking him up would be a lengthy detour. Plus, Doug had roadside assistance, which I had helped him set up. After a series of calls to our friends, all of whom refused to help him, Doug finally had to resort to using his roadside assistance. They towed his vehicle the 10 free miles that came with the program, leaving him to figure out the rest on his own. In the end, what started as a simple misunderstanding over a coffee mug turned into a whirlwind of drama that revealed Doug's true colors. I learned a valuable lesson about setting boundaries and standing firm in the face of ridiculousness. And as for the coffee mug, well, it's still sitting proudly on my kitchen shelf, a reminder of the chaos that ensued over something so trivial. Let me take you back to a rather amusing yet chaotic chapter of my life involving my former roommate, Doug. Now, Doug is a man in his 40s, and let's just say he has a knack for making mountains out of molehills. The latest episode? A coffee mug. Yes, you heard that right, a coffee mug. It all started when I decided to reclaim my beloved coffee mug from Doug. You see, we had been roommates, and during that time I had lent him a few things, including this particular mug that held sentimental value for me. After our living arrangement ended, I thought it was only fair to take it back. But Doug had other ideas. He flipped out on me via text, claiming I was taking something that was worth money. A coffee mug. Can you believe it? In the midst of all this, Doug's car broke down. He had to call a wrecker, which took him an additional 4 miles to his friend Rob's house. You might think this would be a wake-up call for him. But no, he continued to reach out to my husband for help. Doug asked my husband, who is a mechanic, to diagnose the vehicle, or even loan him one of our trailers for a long trip back to his parents' place. Now my husband, being the reasonable person he is, pointed out that he wasn't interested in doing favors for someone who had never reciprocated kindness, especially after the way Doug had treated me. Doug, in his usual fashion, tried to argue that he didn't appreciate having things he valued taken from him. To which my husband calmly replied, "You're right. We'll be around when you swing by to drop off the list of things missing from our kitchen." and I'll make sure to forward the rundown for the unpaid rent and utilities you still owe us to your parents' place. I'm sure you're concerned about settling up. It's the fair thing to do." After that conversation, we didn't hear from Doug again. Rob, who was now stuck with him, reported that Doug was in quite a foul mood. It seemed that karma had come knocking, and it was a little bit sweet. I have to admit, I felt a twinge of smugness about the whole situation. I'm not typically a vengeful person, but watching Doug alienate all our mutual acquaintances while he wallowed in his own drama was a bit delightful. Interestingly enough, Doug's love life was just as chaotic as his friendship dynamics. He often claimed to have a girlfriend who lived 1,200 miles away. The irony? When he visited her, she pointed out that she actually had a boyfriend. It was a classic case of someone forgetting the details of their own story. I could probably write an entire series about Doug's misadventures in dating. In the end, it was just a coffee mug that sparked a whirlwind of events, but it served as a reminder that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing things out. So, here's to coffee mugs and the chaos they can bring.